Welcome to the Bob Priest Show of Life podcast. I'm your host, Bob Priest. Thanks for tuning in today's show. This podcast is dedicated to individuals and professionals who desire to learn more about the subject of health and wellness, as well as alternative technologies to better health and vitality. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to the Bob Priest Show of Life podcast. I'm your host, Bob Priest. Thanks for tuning in today. My guest today is Dr. Debra Greene. Debra's a PhD from Ohio State University, where she taught full-time for 4 years in the Graduate School for Holistic Studies at John F. Kennedy University. She is a professional speaker, author, facilitator, and practitioner of energy medicine for 25 plus years. She is passionate about health and wellness, especially in the area of energy medicine. Welcome, Dr. Greene.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, that's wonderful. I understand we're communicating today and you're in Panama and I'm in the state of Virginia, so we've got a little distance between us.
Yes, but space and time are an illusion.
That's true. So could you tell us a little bit more about yourself and maybe what brought you to do what you do today?
Yes, well, all my life I have been sensitive to subtle energies. And when I was very young, I thought that everybody was seeing the world the same way that I was. I thought everybody was experiencing reality the same way I was. And it took quite a few years for me to realize that that wasn't the case. And then when I realized that I was experiencing reality kind of differently than many people, then I spent the next years believing that there was something wrong with me. and that it was only after that when I realized, okay, this is actually, a gift in a way. And, I'm energy sensitive and I should just embrace that. And I've in fact built a career out of it. So
that's really a unique thought process that you've gone through. For our audience, I think a lot of times people don't realize that our body is made up of energy. They don't stop to think about it. We're electrified. Just if you logically stop and go, the heart is pumping, and when our heart quits, what do? They put energy into our heart to try to restart it. So we need to understand as a people that our body has energy. And then we need to find ways to keep that energy functioning. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And I mean, I would take that even further to say that energy is absolutely primary and fundamental to our functioning on all levels. And, an example of that is if you feel de-energized, if you feel super fatigued, droopy, it's really difficult to function. You don't want to move, for one. It's hard to think clearly. It's difficult to feel happy and uplifted and joyful. And all aspects of our being are affected if our energy is extremely low. And so, when I'm talking about energy, I'm talking about that kind of energy, that sort of get up and go energy,
right?
That feeling of vitality and everything that goes along with it.
Well, that's really neat to hear you put it in that thought process. I had shared with you before we started that I had a stroke a couple of years back, and for the most part, at that point in my life, I thought I was pretty healthy. I was running quite a bit on a daily basis or cycling 30, 40 miles a day. And so I thought I was in a pretty good place. So when I had the stroke, my question that I asked myself was, how does an apparently healthy guy who ran and cycled find himself in this place? And you came back to me and said, I have a perspective in that area I'd like to share with you. So I'd like for you to share that with our audience and let them hear that from you.
Well, thank you. What a great question. I mean, one of the challenges is that most of us pay attention to our physicality like you were doing. You eat the right food, you exercise, and stay fit, and, hopefully paying attention to getting good sleep, because those are the three things that we're told are important to health. Or to put it another way, like if you ask anybody, well, where does energy come from? Well, energy comes from food. So you got to pay attention to what you eat. And energy comes from exercise. So you have to exercise to, keep your energy up. And you also have to get good sleep, because energy comes from, sleeping. And if we take each of those to their logical conclusion, I mean, if energy comes from food, then I should be able to eat and eat and eat and eat. And the more I eat, the more energy I gain. But it doesn't work that way.
Didn't work that way.
And if energy comes from exercise, I should be able to just keep on exercising and gaining more energy, but it doesn't work that way either. And of course, the same with sleep. If energy comes from sleep, well, I should just keep sleeping all the time, right? But no, that does not bring energy. And that's because energy, I mean, those three things are important. I don't mean to downplay them at all, but energy does not come so much from food, sleep, or exercise. Energy comes from energy. Energy can neither be created nor destroyed. Energy comes from energy. And so it's energy itself that brings us energy. And if we traverse the planet right now, looking at approaches to health and healing, we'll discover that every single approach to health and healing in existence that we know of recognizes the primacy and importance of human energy, except for one. And that one approach is conventional Western medicine, which is pretty much what we have, right? So what are they missing? They're missing a crucial, fundamental aspect of human functioning. And my theory on that is that because Western medicine was developed largely through the study of cadavers, dissection and looking at all the organs and systems and all of that. Well, when you're working with a cadaver, you're basically working with a dead body. So the energy has already left that body. And so that's how Western medicine perhaps missed this really vital, pardon my pun, component of our functioning. Whereas in other cultures, in their approaches to health and healing, they were studying living people. And so thus the discovery that energy is primary, energy is fundamental. And I'm talking about human energy, which is different than nuclear power, solar power, or whatever, right? Human energy is a very distinct thing. And in other cultures, they have specific names for human energy. It's sometimes called chi or ki or prana, or in Hawaii, it's called mana. So one of the challenges of the English language is that we don't have a specific word for human energy. And it would be good if we did, because it's a very unique thing. It is our power supply, but it's much more than that.
Man, that is really interesting. And I like the word that you pulled out and you said pun, vital. When we go to the doctor, they're always checking our vitals. They're always checking those things, whatever. But I never once remember ever going and having my energy vital checked. And, when we die, our soul leaves our body, or our energy leaves our body, whatever we want to term it as. And there is nothing there. So, you're right on target, I think, when you talk about we study the cadaver as medical people, but and that's great to figure out where everything is. But we're missing some key components. And I have really been so interested in this whole concept of energy outside of like solar and all those types of things, but the energy we possess, and sine waves and being a former teacher of music, spent a lot of time around physics and how physics play into the sound waves and all that, and make certain pitches, et cetera, et cetera. Well, that's energy. You have to produce those sound waves, whether it's a piano plucking or a guitar or a wind instrument where you're making the sound through wind. So very, very unique. I'm
It is, and
sure.
I'm sorry to interrupt
Go
you,
ahead, go
but
right ahead.
it's fantastic that you have this background in music, because the thing about music is vibration, right?
Mhm.
Music is frequency, and you can't see vibration or frequency under a microscope, right? You can't see music under a microscope
No,
because it's not physical, right? You can see what produces it, but you can't see the music itself. And it's a beautiful metaphor for the way that we function, because just as conventional Western medicine excelled in exploring and naming and identifying all of the aspects of our physicality, in other cultures where they were studying energy, they have been extremely sophisticated in identifying and naming all these different aspects of our energy systems. And you can't see them under a microscope because they're not physical. So it's a challenge, and it's also a beautiful thing. And I think your music background makes you really adept at this.
well, it definitely helps. And as I've been studying the more holistic approaches to health and wellness, I started realizing that back in my days when I would be in the band room, there were certain vibrations, certain pitches that either soothed me or it bothered me. And that's when I started kind of learning that this sound wave, the frequencies, the vibrations had an impact on my body, me as a human being. And then you go further and you put the chordal sounds, the harmonics, and all this in or out of tune, and how those affect your body. So obviously, energy from that perspective has an effect on us as human beings. I think that's why
Absolutely.
people love listening to music so much, is it affects them. They just never really realize how it's affecting them, like what you were talking about and the things that you've experienced.
Yes, and if I can I interject
Sure.
something? I'm sorry,
Oh,
there's so much
please.
to talk about,
Oh, I
Bob.
know. That's what I
But
love about this.
there are certain clinics that have developed music that has been shown through research to have therapeutic effects. It's and in Germany, there's a company that actually makes prescription music, and music for certain ailments and so forth. And in the US, the Monroe Institute has also produced some music that has been shown through research to affect us. So anyway, it's fascinating.
Well, I believe in it so much that I have around my neck right now a device called a Resona Health that is based on what you just said. It basically looks like a little iPad or an iPod, old iPods. And the speaker was taken out, and the coils were put in, and they're all tuned to a certain frequencies, and it has an effect on certain aspects of our body. And it's
Fascinating.
been interesting because I had really bad brain fog yesterday, and I put it on, and it has a setting for brain fog, and within 30 minutes that was lifted. And I'm sitting here going, because I just received this. The gentleman that invented this sent it to me. He was on my podcast last week, and so you'll have to look at it go look at my other podcasts. It'd be something that you might be interested in within your own research. Anyway,
Nice.
let's
I
go.
will.
Let's go back into what you do, and I'm sure, um, Dr. Greene, that you have experienced some real challenges getting folks out there to understand what this is that you really do and how it is so beneficial to us in a health way, in a wellness way. Could you give us some ideas and maybe help educate our audience a little bit more on energy medicine from your perspective?
Yes. And I mean, the challenge is that when we're talking about energy, human energy, as we've mentioned, I mean, you can't see it, you can't hear it. Many people can feel it, but it's kind of invisible in a way. And it also hasn't had a lot of focus in terms of, research historically, although that's changing now, which is really exciting. There are certain organizations that are devoting themselves to studying these subtle energies and coming up with really fascinating and powerful results. But yes, when talking about energy, people think, oh, it's woo-woo, and it kind of gets dismissed. And it's tragic, really, because I mean, from the perspective of energy medicine and my perspective as an energy medicine practitioner and educator, energy is everything. I mean, it's where the action is. And what happens on the physical level is just an out picturing of what's going on these subtle energy levels. And in energy medicine, we typically talk about these levels of our energies. We talk about them in terms of the etheric body, or it's now in the research being referred to as the human biofield. And the biofield interfaces with our physical body through the chakra system, the meridian system, and what's sometimes referred to as the nadi system, nadis. And so that's sort of the interface between the physical and these other energy layers is this biofield, which is being actively studied now. And then there's another, aspect or dimension to us as well, and that is the emotional, which is sometimes in the ancient, esoteric teachings referred to as the astral body or the astral plane. And that refers to what's going on with us emotionally. And then we have a mental aspect, a mental body. And then we have what you could call the spiritual, although I tend to use the word universal, because sometimes when you talk about people having a spiritual aspect, it's easy to think in terms of religion, but these energies have nothing to do with religion. It's not something that you believe in or you don't. These energies simply exist, and they comprise our energy makeup, our constitution. And we talk about them in terms of bodies because they're energetic forms, like a body, that occupy these different dimensions, these different octaves of vibratory frequency, to speak more in musical terms. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Yes.
Yeah.
And
So,
go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you.
Well, we in our culture, in our world, in Western world, we talk about energy all the time, but it's always energy we take out of our natural resources. And so that's all we ever hear. But after having my stroke, I really started focusing in on more of what my body's telling me and what I'm actually feeling in my body or not feeling that day, and how I'm either energized or I'm not, and not from some external force like a pill or something like that, but just, what's going on. And I really believe that there's a lot from what you're educating about. There's a lot for us to learn, and we need to be more open to the fact that this body we have is it's a wonderfully made vessel. And me personally, or other people that are in medical professions, are still finding out new things about our bodies and what's really making our body tick. And your field of endeavors is another one of those areas that we need to spend more time educating ourselves on, because if we want to live a good, healthy, wellness type life, we need to look at all of it, the holistic approach of our body, not just
Absolutely.
not just popping a pill, take care of a pain or something of that nature, but what all can I do with my body to help keep my body a working vessel throughout the entire body? And I love the whole thought process that you're sharing with us. Has there been any experiences that where you have, I know, I'm sure for your own personal self, but have you actually seen anything with patients or clients or people you talk to and work with that you could share that would kind of give us an example of how powerful this really is and how it can help people?
Yes, I can. And I also just want to piggyback on what you were sharing because it's so important. The fact that you pay attention to your energy levels, that's huge right there. Because that's the key. How do you feel inside? And you're absolutely correct in terms of this body is a wondrous thing. And when it's left to its own devices, it has extraordinary healing power in and of itself if we don't mess with it too much. And one of the problems or challenges with conventional Western medicine approaches is that they're only looking at the physical. And so a lot of treatments, prescriptions and surgeries and whatever, they're designed only for the physical to stop the symptom, but they don't really address what the problem is. And from the perspective of energy medicine, the problem is not physical, because again, the physical is just an outpicturing of what's going on these other levels. And so if you really want vibrant health, then you need to pay attention to what's going on these other levels. And it's, paying attention to your vitality levels is a huge piece of that, but also paying attention to what's going on with you emotionally, right? Because emotions are a distinct frequency band. They're different than that get up and go energy, right? I mean, our vitality level is impacted by our feelings and emotions, but the feelings and emotions themselves are distinct, right? So you need to pay it to, and I'm talking, all of us need to pay attention to what's going on with us, not only in terms of our vitality level, but also in terms of our feelings and emotions, because they impact us tremendously. We need to pay attention to our thoughts, which is the mental aspect, right? Like, are you engaging in stinking thinking? Are you, worrying all the time, ruminating in a state of duress or whatever? So we have to pay attention to thoughts, because from the perspective of energy medicine, thoughts are energies, and they impact us a lot. And so, and then we also need to pay attention to our connection to the higher dimensions, for lack of a better term. Like, do I feel connected with, these higher vibrational frequencies, the universal, the spiritual, whatever word you want to use to describe that. So, those are the levels on which I work when I'm working with a person. And of course, clients come in with different issues, and in a way, it doesn't really matter what the issue is. But when we, I mean, one of the things I do in my practice is we investigate each of those dimensions and try to pinpoint glitches, so to speak, try to pinpoint distortions. And oftentimes those take the form of like limiting beliefs or emotional triggers, patterned dysfunctional behaviors, things like that are a little bit outside of our conscious awareness, right? Like, we want to feel better, we want to make a change, but for some reason we're stuck, we're held back. So we have to dip into what's going on those, kind of subconscious levels, because that's oftentimes where the distortions are. And then once those are identified, and I'm after, a couple of decades, really good at pinpointing those things. And then they're brought into the light of conscious awareness. And then, transformation happens really easily that way. And I mean, we could have a whole separate, conversation about consciousness, because consciousness is also an energy frequency, right? But it has a lot of very special properties to it. And I'll toss in another concept right now, which is, all along we've been talking about energy, right? Energy, human energy. But in us humans, energy is not discrete. Energy is never separated from information. So we have to understand energy and information together. And the energy is the power supply, but the information is the code that tells the energy what to do. And when you work on that level of energy and information, you can crack the code. You can decode what is going on in a person's system, and you can recode it. And that's how, in my opinion, healing happens, true healing, because it's as if you're rewriting that script. So it really doesn't matter if it's, relationship issues, if it's money issues, if it's, a physical thing, whatever. When we work behind the scenes at the level of energy and information, then change happens, and it happens quickly and easily. It does not have to take a long time. And I'll just toss in that because this information piece is so important when we're talking about human energy, that it's laced with information. I actually coined this word inergy, inergy, so that when we talk about human energy, it would be nice if we had a word for it in English. And I propose this word inergy because it connotes this idea of energy plus information, inergy, energy. And also the energy and information is accessible inside of us, right? And that's where the action is, what's going on inside of you. So the fastest way out of a situation is in.
Well, that's just really interesting. I was sitting here thinking while you were describing this, that this could be extremely beneficial in the mental health world.
Absolutely. And it is. There's a whole field of endeavor now called energy psychology. And this is where we're studying these things and developing methods that are designed to work in this way. And it's very exciting.
I can see why. I mean, there's a lot of hurting people out here in our world today.
Yes, and you don't have to spend 10 years, working on your mother issues, and then another 10 years working on your father issues, and then 20 years later you're able to have a life.
Right.
And you don't have to do that. And I mean, conventional psychological therapy has its place. I don't mean to put it down, but it's not for everyone. And there's a lot of people who they have enough self-awareness, and they have enough ego strength where they're ready to make more rapid change, and they have the inner resilience and the inner resources in order to do that. And just like conventional psychology or therapies isn't for everyone, energy psychology therapies are not for everyone either. You just got to find the good fit. But it's wonderful that this field is expanding. I find it very exciting.
I'm sure you do, and I would agree with you. And I agree with your comment about one thing doesn't fit all. We have to find a place that really works for the best for us, but we also have to be educated to know there's other opportunities too. And that's what I'm trying to do with my podcast, is just get information out so people can have other options in their life, especially if something's not working. What is something that could possibly help me?
And bless you for doing that. It's
Thank you.
fabulous service that you're providing, Bob.
Thank you. I know you're an author, and so are there any works, any books, any articles, places where people could go to learn more about not only your work, but what maybe you've learned over your research that you've put into documentation that you would like to share with us?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I do have a book out. It's called Endless Energy,
Energy.
The Essential Guide to Energy Health. And there's 21 pages of footnotes in this book. It's filled with a lot of references. So that's one resource. And then also, may I mention my website? Because I have a lot of resources. Yes. Yeah, my website is yourenergymatters.com. yourenergymatters.com. And I have a lot of resources on my website as well. And there are organizations that are studying, as I mentioned earlier. So if you want to learn more about energy psychology, you can go to the ASEP website. It's the Association for Comprehensive Energy Psychology, and their website is energypsych.org, I believe. And there's also the Healing Touch Professional Association, and they have a lot of research on their website as well. So those are a couple of good resources to get people started.
Let's go back to your website, because you mentioned earlier a different way of spelling energy. So I want to make sure that we don't get that confused. So spell your website for us.
Okay. It's Your Energy Matters, yourenergymatters.com.
Okay,
yeah,
great.
And I use energy in the normal way with my website.
All right. So, Dr. Greene, as we kind of wrap up, and I know we could go for an hour or two, and I'm fascinated by this whole subject. And hopefully we'll get you back on a podcast down the road, and we can expand on what you do and your services.
I would love that.
Yeah, that would be great. I'd like to come back around and do that. Could you give our listeners a couple pieces of value that they could take home from today's episode?
Well, I mean, we've already touched on, in my opinion, the biggest one, and that is, as you said, pay attention to your energy inside you, right? And so if you feel vitalized, if you feel that life force energy is at a relatively high level, then it doesn't, I mean, if you're experiencing symptoms like a cold or a flu or a whatever, you're not feeling well, if your vitality inside of you is pretty high, you could even put a number on it, then it's best to let the energy do the work, right? So instead of taking something to suppress the symptoms, the runny nose, the scratchy throat, whatever, just allow your body to go through its normal healing process, because it will. And, on the converse, if you tune in and your energy level is really, really low, you're feeling, fatigued, de-energized, droopy, well, then it's good to pay attention to what's going on the emotional level. Are you upset about something? Is something kind of gnawing away at you? And if that's the case, then please address it, because again, that's where the action is, right? And if emotionally you're feeling okay, then go to the next higher octave, so to speak. We have a music theme going here, which is the mental. Okay, like what's going on inside your head in terms of your thought life. And if that's okay, then go to the next higher level and make a conscious connection with the divine. I'll just use that word.
Bottom line is, be in tune with yourself.
Yes.
Another musical term.
I love it.
And what's the second piece of value that you could share with us?
Oh my. Eat close to the earth, like eat eat, natural, organic, and so forth. I'm an advocate of what I call intuitive eating, which is, if you have a craving or something, go for it, because maybe your body needs that, because your body will tell you, if you open up lines of inner communication, your body will tell you what it needs, and listen and respond. The answers are inside you, mostly, not so much out there. I'm not saying to, completely isolate yourself and not do any research or looking into things, but the bottom line is, you're the expert on your own body, mind, spirit system. And so, use that, be aware of that. And my other, I don't know, people are going to have a hard time with this one, but I got to say it. Please be careful about wireless devices, cell phones, Wi-Fi, anything, smart watches, Fitbits. All of these things emit wireless radiation. It is not good for the human biofield. It is not good. It disturbs that energy. So it's a hard thing to say, because many of us are so dependent on these devices, but it's a problem, and please pay attention to it.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that's something that has been definitely been something I have focused on over the years. I still wear things, but when it comes to this, I keep it away from me as far as I can. I don't tend not to use it up here unless I absolutely have to. I'll put in some, or I'll put it on speaker if I'm in a place where I can do that and not interrupt somebody. But yeah, I've done some research on that and study, and it's an area where we're damaging ourselves, we're hurting ourselves in that capacity. And of course, our world's becoming so electronically charged, supercharged, that it's kind of hard to be away from it. Well, I tell you, Dr. Greene.
I'm sorry. I'm just.
Go ahead.
I keep interrupting you. I do
You're
apologize. Fine. I just can't help it. I do have information on my website about the wireless radiation issue, and there are ways that you can still use devices in a safer manner. You don't have to throw away your cell phone, although it would be good if we all did, but it's not realistic. So there are things that you can do to keep it safer and to protect your energy. And when a device is damaging your energy, that's your life force, right? And so all aspects are going to be affected. So please look into it, either through my website or other resources. There's a lot of information out there now about the dangers of wireless radiation. Thank you for your patience, Bob.
Oh, I'm fine. This has been fascinating for me. And folks, I would encourage you to, if you'd like to learn more about energy medicine and energy and information, and learn more about Dr. Greene, please reach out to her website, yourenergymatters.com, and just start looking into this thought process. Don't just look at it and go, oh, another one of those things. Take some time and educate yourself and find out that there's more to us than meets the eye, and that our bodies are designed to heal themselves if we do the right things to help our body do what it's made to do. Just been a fascinating conversation this morning, and I appreciate you so much for coming on my show and sharing with us. And again, I really want to bring you back on down the road, and let's have another conversation. But thank you so much for being with us today. To learn more about me and my mission to educate the public about integrative medicine and other alternative healing modalities, go to www.bobpriest.life. That's BOBPRIEST.LIFE. And while there, read a blog or two and check out more episodes of the Bob Priest Show of Life podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and we'll see you next week with a new opportunity. Good day.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank
Thanks.
you.